That's what it sounded like at the University of Calgary last fall, when former Israel government spokesman Elon Levy came to campus to speak as a guest of some Jewish clubs. When word leaked out what room he was in, some 200 anti-Israel protesters showed up, blocked the classroom door, and campus security ordered the Jewish students who wanted to hear him speak to evacuate by a back exit for their own safety. Levy later wrote on social media that he was shocked at what happened. Daphne Wornovitzky was studying at the University of Calgary when that incident happened. The 26-year-old was doing her master's degree in social work. She thinks she was the only Jewish student in her program. She experienced having to sit and listen to her classmates' anti-Israel attitudes and also similar statements in class from a professor. And it hurt because her chosen profession is supposed to make space for all, but it hasn't when it comes to anyone who is pro-Israel since October 7th. But Wornovitzky is an old hand at campus advocacy. During her undergrad days when she was studying at Carleton, she was doing pro-Israel work, so she decided to fight back. It took some doing, but she eventually urged the social work department to live up to its ethical policies of its profession and used their language and clinical approaches to successfully call out the intimidating culture and atmosphere which she faced. So can her techniques, which worked with her social work faculty, serve as a model for Canadian Jewish students and professors this academic year? The third one, where the October 7th Hamas attack and Israel's military campaign in Gaza serves as a backdrop? Or is it a small victory compared with the lived experiences on other campuses? I'm Ellin Bessner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. Welcome to North Star, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, made possible thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Daphne Wornovitzky just graduated. She's now put up a shingle as a counselor in the southern Albertan community of Okotoks. Daphne Wornovitzky's U of C social work department story is in contrast to the kinds of anecdotes we've been hearing from campuses already since the new university school year started. At Concordia University, the Student Council Handbook glorifies its anti-Israel protests. Meanwhile, at Toronto's Metropolitan University, masked students in keffiyehs interrupted an orientation event and demanded the provost declare that what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide. Meanwhile, a new study by a Calgary-based conservative think tank called the Aristotle Foundation came out last week, and while they were researching freedom of expression on campus, they found Jewish university students are 4 times more likely than the average student to be very reluctant to speak up and share their views on religion during class discussions, for fear they'll be penalized by their professor or experience hostility from other students. 15% of the students surveyed reported daily abuse on campus for being Jewish. 84% said they were the target of anti-Semitism at least once a year. So on today's episode of North Star, we're joined by Daphne Wornovitzky and by veteran social worker Melanie Trossman. She's a former field instructor for the University of Calgary. She lent Daphne a hand during her campaign. And Gdalit Neuman also joins from Toronto. She's a PhD candidate in the dance program at York University. Daphne, maybe just briefly tell our audience, what you do, who you are, and how this has popped up in your work.
Yeah, so I just finished my master's degree in social work, and I started in May of 2023. So I started just as any other student. I was really excited, very much studying something that aligns with my values. I identify very much as a liberal Jew, and so that was my field. I was going to be a social worker and use my Jewish identity to be an excellent practitioner. And then October 7th happened, and most of my classmates, if not all of them, already knew that I was Jewish. I had gone to Israel that summer. They knew I lived there for 9 months during a gap year. And suddenly I saw a complete shift in how people treated me, how people talked to me. I noticed professors started talking about the quote unquote genocide in Gaza, not even a week after October 7th. Suddenly there was students talking about going to the protests on the Palestinian side in Calgary and downtown, being like, I can't believe that the Jews are being so racist. They're so racist, and talk about it in class. And then other people being like, oh, well, I guess it's not all of them. Just people speaking up for us. But regardless, I kind of dealt with it. This wasn't new to me. I did my undergrad in Ottawa, and so I was very much involved in the Hillel and pro-Israel community there. And so I already knew stuff like this comes up. Um, but it wasn't until my social justice course in May of 2024 where I had a professor justify October 7 and promote anti-Zionism and say that Israel is a colonial state and that October 7 was an act of resistance against the white colonizer. And in that month of my class, because it was an accelerated class, I hid my identity to him, not my classmates, but I just chose not to speak about my identity as a Jew, which I would have done in other classes, and took note of everything that he said. And I decided to bring it forth to the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. And that's where eventually I brought on Melanie to support me in that, in a field where we're supposed to accept diversity. Different opinions weren't being accepted. In the end, I did work with the faculty to rectify the situation.
Wow, that's quite the story. We want to know how you rectified it because I guess that's what we're hearing about, which is where do we go from here and what tools and tricks and tips and advice. Melanie, did you want to weigh in for a second?
Yes, briefly. I just want to say I have been practicing for over 30 years as a social worker. I studied social work in the early 90s in Ontario, never experienced any anti Semitism in my social work. The only time I noticed some bit of anti Semitism was shortly after October 7th, when a colleague of mine took down a picture of a menorah that I had put up. Turned out this colleague was concerned about potentially offending a Muslim client from Iran. Anyways, I worked it out and I luckily the manager I have took it very seriously and we used it as an educational opportunity. The result was I ended up implementing Jewish Heritage Month. And basically, I let them know I know we've had lots of training in Indigenous peoples and LGBTQ plus. And we know if we see one of their symbols, that it is part of the culture of our place, a mental health clinic, that we would never take it down, even if we think it might help another client coming in. We would never think of doing that. So why would you do that with a Jewish symbol?
Let me bring in Gdalit. You're at York and have been teaching and studying for a long time. Why did you speak out in various media about your recent experience and maybe just tell our listeners what happened to you at your conference?
I actually am kind of in between Daphne and Melanie in terms of trajectory, in terms of timeline. My study started in the early 2000s, so I've seen the extreme anti Zionism bleeding into anti Semitism occurring on campus and beyond, extending into academia for the last 25 years, and how it's just become more and more rampant and more intense. Then there's this assumption made in academic circles now, especially in academia and especially in the arts, and my work intersects those fields, of Israel being a pariah state. And it's really unacceptable. So when I started my studies at York University, I was witness to the first anti-Israel apartheid weeks occurring on campus. So slowly but surely, you start seeing these posters on campus, and they become more and more aggressive. And then even beyond university, when I was teaching at York, I was privy to a lot of insider information about QP 3903. And I should premise this by explaining that QP 3903 is the supposedly labor union of the part-time faculty at York University. A lot of them are graduate students, but not only, instructors as well. And they have an anti-Israel obsession in that every single e-newsletter that they send out has at least one item having to do with anti-Israel, be it an event on campus that they're personally organizing or promoting events outside of campus, which I have no idea how that relates to labor issues on campus with workers. And I brought this to their attention directly. I attended a Zoom during COVID online where I tried to pass a motion where they wouldn't be entitled to pretty much manipulate their platform for their anti-Israel political purposes. And of course, it didn't go through, with some lame excuse about them having ties to Palestinian labor unions and working together for years and years without any common sense or logic. And they continue to do so.
Okay, so tell me about the recent conference experience because I think our listeners would like to hear what you saw and did.
So beyond campus, I now, as a PhD candidate, attend quite a few off-campus national, international conferences. And here in the city, I recently attended Congress, which is the largest gathering of academics. It's quite prestigious. It's been around for about 100 years now, 90 years. I noticed some really alarming titles. Again, just reiterating that rhetoric of Israel as an apartheid state.
Do you want to both of you start telling us a little bit about how you turned this around that made a place you could stay and feel it was still okay for you to stay?
The difficulty with this type of advocacy or trying to implement changes in a faculty is that students oftentimes, unless it's academic misconduct, are quite untouchable, and it's up to the university's boards to identify what is misconduct or what is harassment, what is racism, and all that. So a lot of the posts or comments that I was hearing from my classmates, I really couldn't do much about. And so what I and another faculty member thought would be the better way to approach this is targeting the culture within the field of social work instead of like telling on students who are doing this, because you can only do so much with that information. But it's bringing up the professor that I had or other professors that I had that, first of all, didn't say anything when students would do land acknowledgements and acknowledge the quote unquote genocide in Gaza, or professors themselves would talk about it, with, again, it having very little to do with the course content, instead bringing that as evidence that anti-Semitism is going unchecked within classrooms, and it's up to the faculty to create a culture where students could have opposing beliefs and discussion can occur in a healthy manner, even if there's complete disagreement. And that's just not what was occurring at all. And so in approaching it that way, we were targeting the actual ethical values of social workers, of being clinicians, is that we have to be able to work with clients who might disagree with us. I might have to, like, if I'm working at a hospital setting, I might get a client who doesn't like Jews. And yeah, maybe they'll ask for a different social worker or maybe not, but they still have to be cared for. And so if that's the case, if I am supposed to be able to do that with a client, then within the social work field, have to be able to do that together. At the beginning, there was a bit of pushback, but we brought in some other members from the community to also help out. We had a standing meeting every couple of months to discuss this, also putting the onus on the faculty to do like what ideas do you have and how can we help you implement these changes. And so again, at the beginning, there was a lot of this quote unquote peace building idea where I and the professor that I had sit together and have a discussion, or, putting me in a position where I'd have to talk again, be unsafe and have to disclose my beliefs and be in a presence of many people who are on the opposing side. And there was, gaslighting, telling me like it's really like your perspective. But we met with them again, and that's definitely when we saw a little bit of change in the language that they were using. I actually got a few apologies from other deans within the faculty saying that they're so sorry this happened to me, that it's unacceptable behavior. Because again, I said, I'm not out here asking for the children of Gaza to be killed. There are going to be Jewish clients that are going to be scared to see social workers because of this. And that's, once again, not okay in a field that is very proud of their acceptance of diversity. So it was just incongruent. And I do think that hit them a bit hard. And there were some other things that were happening on campus that I think scared them a bit too.
Like?
Well, Ellin Levy came to campus, yes.
We know he was barricaded by protesters in a room and couldn't get out.
Yes, so that happened. I think that event, though, it was clear that it's not just microaggressions. This was clear aggression happening on campus. And if no faculty or the university is doing anything about it, this is going to get very unsafe for Jews.
Ever since October 7th, 2023, Muslim and Jewish communities in Canada have been torn apart.
I've known you for 20 years. You've been at my house for Shabbat supper, I don't know how many times. And for 1 second, you can't put down your friend and just hold my hand?
We're fed a constant stream of Jews and Muslims talking at each other, about each other, but rarely do we hear them talking to each other.
There was, why are you doing this? What's the benefit of doing this?
This podcast aims to do something different. I'm Avi Feingold, a rabbi and a writer with the Canadian Jewish News.
I'm Yafa Sakeja, a Canadian-Palestinian entrepreneur and volunteer with the Canadian Friends of Standing Together.
We're sitting down with Jews and Muslims, Israelis and Palestinians, from coast to coast and across the political divide, having difficult conversations in good faith.
We are not the Israeli government. Palestinians are not Hamas.
This is the place where we're both supposed to end up, Israeli and Palestinian, Arab and Jewish.
Subscribe to In Good Faith, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Melanie, do you want to weigh in? And then I'm going to open up to Gdalit.
So in terms of my situation, I feel quite lucky because I have a manager who is an ally and very supportive. What happened was I spoke with a representative of Diversity and Racial Equity, the DARE program. I really put the Jews on the map, I guess, with diversity because it really was lacking. And it is Alberta-wide. Jews are now part of diversity and inclusion, so that feels like a bit of a win.
How many Jewish social workers are there, of in your program faculty province?
Well, I will say, when I did my social work degree in 1992, there were about 5 of us in a class of 100, and that was in Ontario. In Calgary, where I've been working right now for the last almost 14 years, there's only been 1 or 2 other Jews at a time. At the moment, I'm the only Jewish person out of about 30 people there. Of my peers, I know a handful, probably less than 10.
Yeah, it's quite low. I was the only Jew in a classroom of 30. As far as I know, I was the only Jew in the graduate program. But I did want to say quickly that I think Melanie made a good point about the D&I stuff. I think where we got traction was using that language to bring us into it instead of anger towards it and asking for it to be dismantled completely. I know there is disagreement with that, but I do think that's where it really worked out for me and I guess for Melanie as well.
Gdalit, thanks for being patient.
Pleasure.
For your situation, what do you see or what are you trying to do? Because I know you wrote quite a well-written article in the press recently, which is how we met.
I mean, it is such a huge issue and it's a daily choice whether to be consumed by it, whether to devote time to it, how much time to devote to it. Is this my mission in life now, is just to counter anti-Semitism, or do I live my life? If I may speak to the DEI element, I actually come to it from the other perspective. I think DEI is really a threat and it should be dismantled. I think we can't, as Jews, work in that frame at all because it is based on oppressor-oppressed dichotomy and it just does not work for Jews. And the fact that the majority out there really has, from what we've witnessed in the past couple of years, over the past 20 years for me, has zero understanding of Israel and zero understanding of Jews as an identity and as a multifaceted identity. And so I would like to see it dismantled. And I'm happy that in the States, it's going in that direction. I don't see how we can fit in that frame at all.
Okay, so going forward, like when you hear what Daphne did and how Melanie did, does this give you any hope at all or anything you want to take into your industry?
I'm very happy to hear that they've made strides and they made progress in their work, in their field, and in their geographic area. I think it really depends on, as they mentioned, the people that you're surrounded with, if they're open to listening, if they're empathetic. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of the opposite experience where people gaslight because they think that if they don't answer your emails or they don't meet with you or they send out statements that are just word salads and really contain no substance whatsoever, you'll go away. I do not go away. It's really sad for me to see that the vast majority of my Jewish colleagues are too scared to speak out. And I'm talking about in arts, in academia. And if I can be that voice, it's a bit of a burden. It's a lot of a burden and I can't take on the world, but I try to do what I can in my own specific field, in my own universe.
Well, I mean, social workers are supposed to be able to do this work, right? So maybe they have a leg up on you. Not to say leg, bad pun. You're a dancer. I didn't mean that come out that way.
Well, no, we're trained to talk to. I'm happily surprised that you found some common ground in your industry because particular in academia, I've heard that social work is particularly extreme with regards to Israel.
Yes, it is quite extreme, I would say. Many people in the faculty or students in my class were in the day-long encampment that was taken down at the University of Calgary. But I do agree with Gdalit that in Alberta, in some ways, the more conservative environment politically does help the Jewish community in some aspects. Obviously, we're still experiencing quite a bit of anti-Semitism and there's been vandalism, hate crimes, etc. And of course, at the universities, it's not safe. But there are a lot more people that I would say are maybe more on our side or just don't care. So I do see that. I do feel very fortunate. I don't know what would have happened if I had gone to the University of Toronto, because I've heard it's really hard. I have found that there is always something to be said about, even though I don't agree, but being able to regulate myself in the presence of people I really disagree with and being able to hear them out and creating kind of showing them the mirror of, if I can do this for you and I'm in a position of no power because I'm a student, then you should be able to do this for me.
What did it cost you? And how is your work now, having gone through this exercise? And it wasn't an exercise, it was actually life.
It definitely makes me think about where I will apply to work, and I have to do my research. I'm a therapist. I go to therapy. It makes me nervous. Sometimes I am scared about what therapist I will be going to see for my own, as a client myself. And I think that is a huge cost, and I definitely grieve the ability to be able to see whoever I want to see in a therapy space. But I also think I gained an ability to be very uncomfortable and to also sit with people in their own discomfort as well. And again, speak to this topic, not necessarily from a position of let's have a conflict of opinions, but let's see like what we do agree on, which oftentimes is, peace. And so instead of arguing the semantics, because a lot of times, especially again with my peers, it's really hard to argue those semantics because they don't understand. But it's okay, do you see how this is causing harm? Because you're tokenizing me as a Jew. You're only, I'm the only Jew and so you're putting me on a different playing field when this like impacts me directly and doesn't impact you at all. This is for you an academic exercise. For me, this is my life and my family's life and my friends' lives. And so I think when, we get down to that human level, in my experience, has been really helpful.
The way you find common ground and build dialogue it's brilliant. That's what everyone's supposed to do. And Gdalit, last word to you. When you hear this language that is used, is it even usable or a skill you might want to try, or maybe you have already tried it?
Maybe I sound a little aggressive. Is that what you're saying?
I think, for everyone, it works very differently. Like I go to these classes, I'm in these social justice DEI courses, so I know already the language they use. For me, like it's not very hard to use it back at them. But I also think, sometimes it's important to be, I don't even think aggressive is the right word. I think it's assertive. Yeah, standing up for yourself. I think it's really important to do that as well. And every field is different. Every area of work is different. And so I think leaning on supports is probably, getting a team. I think that was the other thing, is like building a team can be so nice, because even if it doesn't work, you have people to lean on.
I think it's problematic that you assume that I don't use language that's acceptable or that I'm too aggressive, or I'm just speaking to my experience because you asked me questions. With all due respect, when I speak to other people about the issues, I know who I'm speaking to. I know where they come from. I understand very well the DEI framework and the DEI terminology, and I do utilize that when and if it's appropriate. Yeah, and with regards to what it cost me, it certainly cost me some personal relationships. I've lost friendships. I've lost friendships from people that I thought I could count on with regards to Daphne's comment about building a team. And I haven't had the friends that I thought would be there to help me. So this is very real. and it can hurt. I just want to really emphasize that all of this, even if it sounds, oh, this is my personal experience, or I feel badly, and it's very real. These things can get very, very, very challenging to work through, and they have an impact not just on organizations with regards to BDS not being invited to perform or not being invited to speak in terms of a particular speaker from abroad or an Israeli here, but it's also very impactful in terms of individual lives as well.
I hear you. Please understood. It wasn't meant in any offense at all.
Gdalit, I just wanted to say, like, everything I know about York University, and I have friends whose kids are there. Oh my goodness, that's a much rougher place to be than University of Calgary. And the fact that you are speaking up, I think, is amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being on the CJN's North Star.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of North Star, made possible thanks to Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin's Charitable Foundation. Now, the work is not over for our guests. Daphne Wornovitzky says she'll continue to engage with her U of C social work department in the coming weeks in meetings as an alumnus. Melanie Trossman says she was recently asked to help her clinic's diversity and inclusion team to help teach staff about different religions. And we've also put a link in our show notes to Gdalit Neuman's recent article about her struggle to counter anti-Israel narratives in her school and at academic conferences. Our show North Star is produced by Zachary Kauffman and Andrea Varsany. Our executive producer is Michael Fraiman, and our theme music is by Brett Higgins. Thanks for listening.